At this point in time, I'd like to call this meeting of the Middlesex County Board of Chosen Freeholders to order. Please rise. A moment of silence. Please remember in your thoughts and prayers former County Prosecutor Warren Willentz and Linda Diffin, wife of George Diffin, who is a county employee here in the Public Property Department. Salute to the flag. Dennis.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, has been complied with and shall be entered into the minutes of this meeting.
Roll call, please.
Freeholder Barrett.
Here.
Freeholder Delina.
Here.
Freeholder Polos.
Here.
Freeholder Rios.
Here.
Freeholder Scott. Here. Freeholder Valenti. Freeholder Director Rafano.
Here. Reports of freeholders. Freeholder Carol Barrett.
Thank you, Director. Tonight, I'm providing to my freeholder colleagues a list of the members on my Open Space and Recreation Public Advisory Committee and the names of those who serve on the Open Space Working Committee. In addition, I will be providing to the freeholders a current list of all properties being considered for open space preservation and all municipal recreation projects being considered. The Open Space and Recreation Public Advisory Committee determines whether the land proposed for open space preservation is consistent with the Middlesex County Open Space Preservation Plan. The committee then refers eligible projects to the freeholders so they may send it to the Middlesex County Improvement Authority for due diligence. Requests also come from our municipalities for recreation grants. Once a project is determined to be eligible, or when a municipal request is made, I engage the expertise and advice of the Open Space Working Committee, which was established in 2004. The Working Committee assists me in my responsibility to recommend projects to the full Freeholder Board for approval and funding authorization. Members include our top financial officials, including Treasurer Jim Phillips, Comptroller Al Kachinkis, and Assistant Controller Joe Peruti. County Counsel Tom Kelso assists in identifying any legal issues that may arise during a project. Paul Clark of the Middlesex County Improvement Authority oversees the due diligence on all sites proposed for acquisition. And we have Ralph Albanier, who oversees all funding requests for municipal recreation funds and is a member of the Open Space Advisory Committee. John Polomina oversees the day-to-day operation of the county and all of its departments, placing him in a key advisory role. This team helps me evaluate a project from every aspect so it may successfully move through the process that I may make a sound recommendation to the Freeholder Board. We meet at least once a month to review the list of projects to ensure appropriate funding is in place for current and future projects so that our preservation and recreation efforts stay on track. We also review information from the Open Space Advisory Committee regarding possible preservation projects. We review requests for municipal recreation grants and historic preservation projects. And I will pass these down so that my colleagues will have a copy. Also, did I do that? Oh, wow. Thank you. Such a gentleman. Also, on March 27th, I attended the Middlesex County Urban County Housing and Community Development Committee meeting. I haven't figured out yet why it's at 9 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday. I might have to discuss that at a later date. That's the second year that I've attended at that ungodly hour on Saturday. This committee meets to determine how to allocate approximately $4 million in community development block grant and home investment partnership funds, which will come from the federal government to the urban county municipalities in 2010. The committee consists of 2 representatives from each of 19 communities, as well as 2 from the county. It has met several times a year since 1975. That's every year for the past 35 years to cooperatively determine how best to spend these funds. Since its inception in 1975, the CDBG program has brought nearly $80 million in federal funds to Middlesex County, 19 participating municipalities. This is an outstanding example of our municipalities working together for the good of all and for the good of the county. I want to thank all of my freeholders for their appreciation, for their continued support and assistance securing these much-needed grant funds for the residents of Middlesex County. And thanks, Mr. Buckley. And I was only teasing about the 9 o'clock, although 10 would be better. That's my report.
Thank you, Freeholder. Freeholder Stephen J. Piccolino.
And thank you, Freeholder Director. Carol, for your information, the original committee of the open space was myself, Jimmy Phillips, Ralph Albanere, and Dave Crabio. They were the original ones that started it a long time ago. I give you credit, you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Okay, and mine, the Parks Department, Ralph Albanere told me the parks are getting in shape for a great summer. The baseball leagues, the soccer fields, the bocce ball courts. Am I right, Ralph? They're lining them up tonight so Mickey Gross can go down there and play bocce ball in service. But I'd like just to say that we have a great park system in Middlesex County because the freeholders are always sure that the people of Middlesex County get the best parks. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Freeholder. Freeholder Polos?
Oh, thank you, Director. A couple items. First of all, Carol, thanks for the update that I was requesting at Monday's meeting. Appreciate the information on the open space committees and so forth and membership. When are we going to be receiving the financial information? Because we have the property on for consideration tonight, and I had requested from John an update as to our financial wherewithal before we proceed with the purchase.
John?
That information, again, was provided. I can get a copy to you right after the meeting. But all of these projects have been presented to the board previously, and maybe as we go through them, we could review some of the financials. When we do this, why don't we just take a break? I think I have a copy upstairs. I'll bring a copy down to you right now, so you have it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I was hoping to get it before we voted tonight. I just think that
But
the
it's-
board
it's
should
an-
have a copy, because, you know, we kind of made some changes as we went through this year, and I'm just really concerned from a public perception as well. We have about $92 million floating out there in open space funds. I think we have an obligation, in the interest of transparency, to show exactly what we intend to purchase, come up with a priority list that goes well beyond the breadth and depth of what the open space working committee has recommended. I think as a board, we should make some determinations as to exactly what we're going to afford to do. I know that the Freeholder Director has recommended that we reduce open space purchase this year by about $11 million, and I want to make sure that there are a lot of projects that I've heard about, I'm sure the freeholders have as well, and I just want to make sure that the ones that we're all aware of are actually going to be funded, and we haven't really had a comprehensive list update, and some of them are significant land purchases, and I want to make sure that that's obviously our first priority, that we have enough funding to be able to do that before we just kind of willy-nilly just start to approve things without having a real plan. So we haven't gotten an update since last year, And we've changed the dynamics by reducing the amount of open space money that's coming in this year, and we haven't gotten an update since that time.
A copy was provided to all the freeholders at the end of 2009.
Correct.
The list has not changed. The information that was provided then has not changed from a financial perspective either. As I mentioned on Monday evening, even with the decision by the board to reduce the open space contribution by 1 cent in 2010, the funding required to meet the considerated items for both open space acquisition as well as recreational improvement grants is covered by the funding that we put in place for 2010. That list has not changed. So the items that are on for consideration in tonight's meeting are items that this full board has been aware of the amount of money that has been allocated, and it's up to the board tonight to decide whether or not they want to continue. By the way, all of these items that are on this evening were 2009 items for consideration to begin with. There are no 2010 requests that are reflected on tonight's agenda. So at this point, these are items that have been out there that are part of the information that was given to all the freeholders at the end of 2009, and that has not changed, freeholder.
Just want to make sure then, John, because I've asked a couple of times to have the report when we do these open space purchases. You're saying everything that's been submitted for request for purchase is fully fundable?
That is correct.
So any request that a community has pending or has submitted to us, we have enough money to purchase?
All of the 2009 requests for open space acquisitions as well as recreational improvements, the funding has been identified and is available. Any requests that have come in subsequent to 2009 or 2010 obviously are under consideration by the advisory committee, and then ultimately it will be the decision of the board of chosen freeholders on whether or not they want to support that.
All right, well, I still think we should just get that updated list before. I think as a matter of habit, and we talk about this at each meeting, before we actually make the purchase, we should get an updated report as to exactly what our status is. I mean, it's a significant amount of money, and I think that we find ourselves purchasing without really understanding what the mechanics of the finances are each time we purchase. So I just think it's a simple task that when we have a purchase on the resolution format, and again, I'm bringing this up tonight because I brought it up privately as well several times, we should get an updated report from the committee or from finance that says, here's where we're at, here's what's left over, and here's what the purchase is. I know that negotiations change values. I know that other situations change costs, and we just need to be mindful of that as we're purchasing. I've recommended it before. I'll just make the recommendation again. It's up, I guess, to the board.
I just want to say one thing, if I can, freeholder. You made a reference before to being willy-nilly. None of our purchases are done willy-nilly. They're referred to the board, they review it, they make recommendations, and then it comes to us. So a lot of hard work is put into the purchases and a lot of negotiation on behalf of the freeholder Barrett, and to say it's willy-nilly is not really, that's not true.
Well, I use that expression only because I kind of characterize it similar to what we were doing with the recent road improvements. And again, even there, I'm just asking that we come up with a priority list. I know this is not moving forward from the board standpoint, but I can continue to at least advocate for it. We need, in these tough fiscal times, we're facing a terrible budget situation. My understanding is that we just got hit by another $2 million reduction in revenue. Is that correct, John, from the Division of Local Government Services?
That is correct.
So we need to find $2 million more, and as we're looking for these dollars, I think we need to make some very difficult choices as to exactly what we can afford to do.
And
Whether
I
it's a
could
road
also-
project, if I could just finish for a moment.
Sure.
Whether it's a road improvement project or a capital ordinance, we can't think of capital bond money as simply free money, not when we have to put 5% up to be able to afford to do it. So my contention is, again, and then I'll move on to the rest of my report, is every time we go to spend significant dollars, we should be getting an updated financial report to determine exactly where we at. And I believe that we should probably have a work session on open space, that would be my recommendation, Director, to come up with a priority list. I think that this should be something that should be done by the board in total, not by just Freeholder Barrett and the working committee. We're talking $92 million of taxpayer money and a significant number of projects, and we should prioritize as a Freeholder board in public discussion which ones we want to be able to fund and how we want to move ahead. That would be my recommendation. I would make the same recommendation when it comes to capital improvement projects as far as roads and so forth. We have a huge number of projects that are slated for 2010, and the question becomes whether or not we can really afford to do them. Given our fiscal picture and the recent denial by Division of Local Government Services on the $2 million, I think we have to find every penny possible. I know that the administrator is endeavoring to do that, but I think that there are other places that we could be looking where there are large numbers rather than trying to just tighten the belt around our department heads and staff. So at least that would be my recommendation.
Just to comment on the $2 million so that you're aware, as everything else that we do within county government, until the budget is adopted, there are always issues and opportunities that come up relative to the final adoption, which will take place on April 29th. As Freeholder Polis has mentioned, that there was a $2 million county clerk revenue item that this board, the local finance board, did not approve. But I am pleased to say that through the efforts of our financial controller and the department heads, we've identified, both from an expense standpoint and a revenue, to cover that $2 million. So we are continuing to move towards the adoption on April 29th. So to say that there is just a $2 million revenue disqualification is a bit disingenuous. The reality is, like with any budget, these are the kinds of exercises that go in each and every year when you're going to work a budget, that items will be reviewed, items will be accepted, denied. Our job as both the administrator and as also the controller and the department heads to work really diligently to make sure that we come in with a budget that's responsible to the taxpayers. And I'm proud to say that on April 29th, that will be done, and taxes will not increase in 2010. And so I just want to make sure the board is aware that this is work in progress. And again, fundamentally, the way county government works is that whether it be in Freeholder Barrett's department or in your department, Freeholder Polis, there are subcommittees that work many of the underlying issues. And we rely on the expertise of not only the county employees, but also on outside agencies to help us in establishing recommendations that come before this full board. And it's important to remember that we rely on that staff to provide the information and to rely on their expertise. We do that not only in open space, but we do that in the departments that you oversee, Freeholder Polis, as well as everyone else. And I'm confident that the work that we're doing is demonstrated by the fact that in 2010 we will be adopting a budget that's below 2009 levels.
Right, and I don't want to get into a back and forth with you, John. I think that's inappropriate, but I think it's inappropriate to suggest that my comment about a $2 million revenue loss or denial, I should say, is disingenuous. I don't think that I don't want to personalize it, but I know it was denied, and we now need to find those dollars. I had also suggested in February, Director, that we consider having public participation and trying to help us review our budget. I know that was denied, poo-pooed, I should say, by you and perhaps the rest of the board. I'm recommending it again, given the situation that we're in. I think we need some new eyes on the budget to find better ways where we can save. There are areas within our budget that, in all candor, are not even being evaluated. And I think that that's a mistake. And I think that we need to look across the board, particularly at the large ticket items, if we're going to be able to move forward. So I've made the recommendation in the past. I don't know why we won't at least consider it. I'm sure that John could use help. He was a former freeholder, but certainly doesn't bring anything as far as a new vision as far as how we can adjust the budget to the table. I think having some outside expertise, perhaps through the state or through Rutgers, to help us evaluate ways that we can save. We still have time to do that. We're not functioning for an adoption until the 29th. And I think, again, that there are some areas, particularly when it comes to professionals, where we can start looking at ways to save money that I've been able to identify rather easily.